Computer. Okay, Ina Park, it's really great to meet you over Zoom. I've heard a lot about you from Peggy Orenstein, and she told me I had to read Strange Bedfellows, your new book. And I said, what is Strange Bedfellows about? And she said, STDs. And I was like, do I really have to read that book? And she said, no, you really have to read that book because it's so funny and it's so relevant to middle-aged women and to people having sex. And what I really loved about it is that you've been, you're a physician, but you also were a peer counselor in college, and you dressed up as a condom, and you once even served as a live model for a gynecological exam. And I think it's safe to say you've spent your entire life destigmatizing STDs. Why?
I think that's fair to say. And I think, so, you know, some people are those type of people that people end up saying things to that they didn't mean to say, like, oh my God, I didn't mean to tell you that. And I think I've always been one of those people. And when we talk about sex, as you know, sex is so taboo in our society to begin with. And then STIs or STDs, which are the absolute worst consequence, right? Other than unintended pregnancy, perhaps, of certain types of sex, you know, those things are so stigmatized, they're automatically associated with some sort of label of promiscuity or being tainted or dirty or contaminated or whatever. And so we have so much work to do to, you know, undo those narratives. And I don't know, I have nothing else to do with my time. Like, I might as well spend it trying to make people feel better about their sex lives and the inevitable consequence that many of us are going to have, which is an STI or an STD.
Well, I actually have to say that I read your book and felt it was life-changing, meaning when I finished reading it, I had a completely different understanding of STDs. I had a completely different way of looking at it. And in fact, I found myself sitting at a bar waiting for a friend, reading this book and laughing out loud to the point where somebody next to me, the man next to me, said, what are you reading about? I said, STDs. And what I loved about it is your willingness just to open your own heart and open your own sense of humor about this. Like, there was one moment you were talking about, let's say I infected all of the parents in my children's nursery school class or whatever it was. I just love that. And so what I really would like to talk about, especially for middle-aged women,
yes,
and especially for middle-aged women like me who are dating,
yeah,
you know, for example, chlamydia, herpes, the ones that we are worried about. So let's just start with the big H, right?
Yeah.
And what I loved about the book is you said, you wish that we spoke about herpes, or we pronounce it the way the French do, herpes, which would sound like a very pretty scarf, right? So talk to me about herpes.
I mean, you know, more than half of us have it, Deb. So let's just start with that, right? Because, you know, there's two main types: herpes type 1, HSV1, herpes simplex virus 1, and herpes simplex virus 2. And, you know, the interesting thing about both of those is that overall, the amount of herpes sort of in the United States is declining. And part of that, I think, is that less of us are getting infected with HSV1, which typically causes oral cold sores when we're kids, because I think we're just much more obsessed with hygiene and not sharing the things with our kids and not kissing on the mouth and not, you know, sharing from cups and, you know, sanitizing everything up the yin yang. And so a lot of our kids are entering their sex lives never having been exposed to that virus. So what they're doing is when someone gives them oral sex for the first time, they're getting HSV1 genitally, which was not happening so much before because we were all getting it as kids from our parents through, you know, shared utensils and cups and kissing. Now, herpes type 2 is the one that causes most of the recurrent genital ulcers that when we hear people talking about, you know, getting recurrent outbreaks, most of those people have HSV2 or herpes type 2. So you rarely can get HSV2 in the mouth. Most of the time it stays in the genitals, but HSV1 likes both the mouth or the genitals or the butt for that matter. It's really equal opportunity.
So should people be avoiding oral sex or should they be enjoying oral sex? I mean, here's the big question is, how bad is herpes really?
I mean, first of all, you know how I'm going to respond to that question about oral sex. I'm a huge fan of oral sex. We cannot having oral sex. Like, why do we keep living if none of us can have oral sex? So no, we have to keep having oral sex. We have to keep having vaginal sex. We keep, you know, we have to have anal sex if we like that. So no, we can't stop having sex. This virus has been around for 3 million years, probably, right? It's not going away. We can't stop living our lives. I mean, now, the parallel would be like now COVID, right? COVID's probably just going to be around.
Right.
We can't stop living. And we definitely can't stop having sex because that's one of the joys in many people's lives. So we can't stop doing the things that give us joy and pleasure. We just have to understand that, like, it comes with the territory. I say that it's the cost of doing business. It's just, if you're going to be a sexual person, you are probably going to confront this in some form or another, herpes or some other STI.
So how did herpes get so stigmatized?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's hard about herpes is that it's the advice and the, sort of the recommendation that you always have to disclose your herpes status to future partners. And so it's because you have to tell people in perpetuity, you know what I mean? And then there's always that fear that what if somebody is not that educated about it, freaks out, overreacts and says, I like you and I'm not going to continue to have sex with you because of this. So I think that is why it's so stigmatized. And prior to the advent of the antivirals that we have now, like acyclovir or valacyclovir as examples, there was nothing you could do really for it. And for some people, they had very debilitating, painful outbreaks, and they were using things like radiation and ether and these draconian treatments that were worse than the actual outbreaks themselves. So I personally think it's the disclosure and fear of rejection. And that fear is real, Deb, because some people do freak out about it, what I'm trying to do with like my social media account, for example, and just all of the different training and teaching that I do with folks is trying to give people realistic expectations about what you're really dealing with here.
So to that end, because we're trying to destigmatize herpes, I'm going to tell you a story about me, which is that I avoided herpes my entire life.
Right.
Up until my early 50s. And then I was with an ex-partner who did not disclose and who had herpes and who also cheated. So I don't know exactly how it happened, but I didn't find out I had herpes too until I took an STD test for a new partner. And I have to say, I did freak out because of the stigmatization and because I read that Time magazine article way back when with the big, right?
Yep.
And what I will say on this Zoom publicly is that I finally had an outbreak. I took a Valtrex. The pain was gone in 3 hours. The sore was gone in 3 days. And I've had periods that are worse than that. I've had paper cuts that are worse than that. So here we are, thank goodness I have a partner who's understanding about this, but I nearly called off the relationship. I nearly called him and said, this is not worth it being with me. I've got the big H on me, but actually it's not that bad. And I really I'm sure it's different for all people. You're an STD, you treat STDs. So obviously you've seen all types of it, but I think it's really important that we speak out. And those of us who have it say, I have it and my life is fine. In fact, it's on the list of things that concern me, it's quite at the bottom.
Exactly. Right. I have HSV1 that I know of, and I don't even know if I have HSV2, but I think your point is really well taken in that for many people, the fear and the psychological impact is much greater than the physical impact. And when some folks actually have an outbreak, it's so mild, they like to have a little bit of itching, or it feels like they actually got a little paper cut down there, or it's a little a ditzel or whatever, I don't know what the medical term for that is, right? But I mean, it's something so inconsequential that they're like, was that it? And sometimes that's what it is. And then of course, like there are those people for whom the outbreaks are much more widespread. There's a lot more, lesions or ulcers. It's very painful. And so for those folks, they're sometimes doing Valtrex every day. Right. You know what I mean? And that's fine. And that actually works really well for some people. And that's what they need. But everybody is different. Like some people are getting it every single month. Some people get it once a year. And some people actually have a couple outbreaks and never have any again. So it's a huge range of people's responses.
And what are the risks of Valtrex, if any?
I mean, they're very low. I have patients who've been taking it, for example, who were having 10 outbreaks a year. And, even if they go off of it, they're still having like 3 or 4, and that's too many for them. So I have patients who've been taking it for more than 10 years. So, really, if you have kidney disease, then, that's something to consider. But if you have no health problems, there's no reason why you can't take long-term Valtrex for many years on it.
Fantastic.
Not as an advertisement for Valtrex, you can take acyclovir or famciclovir. It doesn't matter which antiviral.
Exactly. Okay, moving from herpes to crabs, and again, howling. I was howling during the crabs chapter. And one of the things that made me laugh was you said that because of the deforestation of our genitalia, crabs is on the decline. Talk to me about this.
Well, so Deb, no, I have no patients under 40 who have any pubic hair. So I say that in the chapter, I'm like, when did pubic hair become the enemy? I have no idea. And then everybody feels like if they have a stray hair, one hair that they didn't get rid of before they saw me, they're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh my God, your pubic hair is not my problem. I have so many other problems. And I just think it's very interesting. I don't know if it's porn. I've been thinking about this, and I've talked to, our friend Peggy about this. In porn, nobody has pubic hair as well. And, I don't know if it's everybody's like wanting to infantilize, you know what I mean? What their genitalia look like, but pubic hair is normal after puberty, right? So, and it reduces friction, and I think pubic hair has a purpose, but a lot of people are taking it all off. And I think the stories that I tell are of people who took it off in a hurry, you know what I mean, with a razor, and maybe had an STI there like HPV, and then just spread it all over their genital area, because shaving, waxing, these things cause micro traumas and tears in the skin, Deb. So let's say you were like going out on a date and you're like, I don't like the way my hair looks, I'm going to do a quick shave here. You have all these little cuts in your skin. So let's say you get exposed to herpes from that partner. Now you have hundreds of little entry points for that virus to come in. So I'm not saying not to take it off, but you should take it off, the day before. Like, don't shave 20 minutes before you're about to have sex, because now you've created all this trauma in your skin.
Well, that is a really good point. Don't shave before sex. Give it a day.
Yeah. I mean, some people, you need to maybe plan. You're like, I might have sex tomorrow. Let me make sure things look good. You know what I mean?
But doesn't pubic hair also have a protective aspect, particularly with people with vaginas?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I can't prove it, but at least the research that we have seems to demonstrate that people who take out their pubic hair, especially those that take it all off, more than 10 times a year. So we call those the extreme groomers, you know what I mean? They report, more STIs. And so, I think that, yes, there's cushioning protection. And then of course we know that there is also trauma that happens with the hair removal. So I think I'm telling people, keep your hair. I understand if people don't like it. Well, so then trim, you know what I mean? Don't take it all off.
Okay. So we couldn't have a proper talk about STDs without talking about HIV, which, does this concern middle-aged women today? And if it does concern middle-aged women today, how does PrEP come into play in our health lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a middle-aged woman who's exclusively having sex with other women or exclusively having sex with other men, it's not as huge of an issue as long as your partners are willing to get tested before you have some sort of sex that it doesn't involve barriers. You know what I mean? If you want to go without barriers, then if everyone knows their status, it's not as huge of a deal. I think if you are playing in a polyamorous community, I think if you are with, if you're a woman who has sex with men and then your partner is also having sex with men, for example, or transgender folks, the sexual networks are different, Deb. You know what I mean? And so I think as long as everybody's willing to test before, the decision to go on PrEP, if you're not changing partners very frequently, or your partner doesn't, play around with lots of other folks, for middle-aged women, it's a little bit lower risk, you know what I mean, in terms of HIV compared to the average man who has sex with men of the same age, right?
Right.
It's just HIV in heterosexual networks than there are in networks of men who have sex with men.
And what's so interesting about that statistic is that we middle-aged women, I'm 56 years old, and I remember being at college when the school newspaper sent a condom my sophomore year with the paper. I mean, this was when HIV was big. I was in college between 1984 and 88, and this was when suddenly we were all frightened to death of STDs, right as we were all becoming sexually active. So I have to say, it is a bit of a relief to think that it's not as big of a risk for someone my age in my sexuality dating men who are exclusively heterosexual.
Yeah, it's much lower risk, especially like if your partners, which I, would highly recommend everyone sort of get tested before entering, and having condomless sex. If people are willing to do that, I think it's pretty low risk, especially if you're saying like, I'm not with other people and we're just with each other. You know what I mean? I think it's pretty low risk. I think though, if the relationship is open and people are having partners, with other people and you're having sex very frequently, then it's time to talk to your doctor about taking PrEP, which is sort of a daily pill that folks can take to prevent HIV, almost like a birth control pill for HIV.
And
but
in terms of the sort of the percentage of people on PrEP right now, would you say it's 90% gay men?
I would say that's probably pretty close.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other question I have for you is, when you have somebody my age come into the office, what do you tell them? What's a typical thing you kind of tell a patient who's my age who is sexually active?
Well, you know what, Deb, the thing that I found with folks, and I'm very close to your age as well, I just turned 49 a couple of days ago, but is that many of us, especially if we were in long-term relationships or marriages, basically got no education when we were younger. We're in long-term relationships, so we're not like keeping up with the information. So people come in like a deer in the headlights saying like, oh my God, I'm dating again and I know nothing. And so a lot of time is just spent sort of like on the basic kind of education, like what are you most likely to get, which I tell them is probably most likely viruses like HPV or HSV, herpes simplex virus. We talk about chlamydia. It's just much less common after the age of 25. You can certainly still get it. But, and then, unfortunately, the things that we have to protect in terms of barriers haven't really changed that much. So, if you're having penis and vagina sex, like there's condoms, and that's pretty much it in terms of barriers. And now there's this new latex underwear that the FDA just approved for oral sex, if people want to go there. But yeah, so I think what I do tell people, and Stephen Karpiak from the Gay Men's Health Crisis said this, not me, but he says age is not a condom. And so I use that all the time.
Age is not a condom. That is a brilliant expression.
It's true, because people have this misconception. I'm 50, like that doesn't apply to me anymore. And that's not true.
Well, I am a perfect example of that. And also, we have to talk about the fact that I got an STD test before this new relationship that I got infected with, and I had trusted that he had gotten one as well. And I didn't ask to see it, but I do think now having been through what I've been through, that you ask to see it. You're at the beginning of a relationship, but there's a piece of paper, there's an online result, ask to see that online result.
Yeah. And I think someone should be very forthcoming with you, but like, oh yeah, I'm like also as concerned about safety. You just have to see, like, do your values line up? You know what I mean? And if the person is like cagey about it or doesn't want to, talk to you about the last time they got tested or whatever, it's a red flag. Like, you don't need to be with a person like that. And I think also what I've noticed is like, for folks who are getting back out there again, like maybe people are lacking some confidence, like, oh, I should be with this person because they're nice. And even though, this part of it is kind of making me a little bit uncomfortable, like, I just want to get back out there. I want to have sex, and I think we just all have to understand, like, there's a lot of people out there, and that you just don't need to settle for somebody who doesn't share those values. And especially with something like an STI, because if you get HPV, you might be dealing with cervical precancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if there's like,
totally.
There's repercussions about, with this. So
yeah, I had to have my cervix removed after an HPV 16-18 infection that turned precancerous. Yes. And yes, I made sure to get my kids Gardasil.
Yeah, exactly. And can I just make a plug, not only for Gardasil, but like for people to read your memoir, which is fantastic, by the way, because not because I wanted to scare people off from having sex, but like HPV is no joke either. Do you know what I mean? And, it can certainly lead to serious outcomes like cervical precancer and cancer. And now we have this fantastic vaccine, which honestly, by the way, is probably one of the greatest developments, like in my particular field. I've been doing this for 15 years and it's incredible. We have nothing like this for any other STI. So the HPV vaccine, I like highly recommend it to any.
The minute I heard about it, I got all of my kids vaccinated immediately.
Yes.
I mean, I made the appointment that week. I was like, okay, time to get this vaccine completely. We also have to talk about UTIs, and I've done I've done many stories on UTIs and estrogen and vaginal estrogen as curative and preventative. Sorry, not curative, but as preventative for UTIs. But I do want to talk about cleanliness in sex. So
Yes,
there are times, and I've talked about this with girlfriends, where their boyfriends will do a little butt play with their fingers and then go straight to the clitoris, which means that there are feces or fecal particles going into the vagina. And we need to, once and for all, over the Zoom, but hopefully, talk about it more openly, but that's a no-no.
Yeah, I do not approve of this. Well, I mean, I approve of butt play, but the issue is that, the clitoris and the urethra are so close together. It just, and then there's fluids around, right? And the finger slips or whatever. And it's just like instant UTI. Just sign yourself up. Just give me the Cipro now. I mean, yeah, so it can easily happen. And the other thing that happens as well is like, sometimes if you're having like a partnered sex with like a male partner, or if you're with a female partner and a toy is involved, like it slips across the butt or into the butt a little bit and then gets in near the vaginal area. And then again, UTI. So
people have to be very careful about getting butt elements into the vagina, basically.
Yeah. And that's like a great lesson for life that applies. I don't care if you're, 20 or 50, it's the same thing. But the issue is, Deb, as you know, is like with like perimenopause and menopause, it's like everything gets more like delicate and whatever. And some people, when they hit perimenopause, like you look at them wrong and they get a UTI, you know what I mean? So you have to be even more sort of hygiene conscious, I feel like, around perimenopause and menopause.
Well, I will also say anecdotally that I was a chronic UTI sufferer since my early 20s. And once I went on vaginal estrogen, they've been gone. Completely 100% gone, and I'm sexually active right now. So I, for one, count it as a miracle drug and talk about it all the time. And there's a woman on Twitter, Ashley Winter, who had these buttons made, said, "Ask me about vaginal estrogen." Like at a restaurant when they say, "Ask me about the fettuccine."
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true. I mean, and it's funny because it's like, it shouldn't be a secret, you know what I mean? Like these little life hacks, but sometimes it is, like I feel like things should be common knowledge that aren't common knowledge sometimes.
So is there anything else that I have neglected to ask you that you want to tell me, either about your book, about STDs in general, about female health, that we haven't discussed just now?
I mean, I think, one of the things that I like to talk about is just, I want to normalize, especially because some of your, your audience are folks that are getting back out there again, maybe after having been in a long-term relationship. It's just to understand, like, I want to normalize the fact that an STI could absolutely happen to you. And it just says nothing about you as a person. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, you can go to Target, and whether your mask slips down below your nose and someone breathes the wrong way and you end up getting an STI, and it's exactly the same thing. You end up getting COVID. The exact same thing can happen to you. Your clothes just happen to be off. You know what I mean? It's a virus or a bacteria, like you could get, eating bad food at a restaurant. I mean, so I want people to think about it and frame it in their mind that, like, I'm getting back out there. This could absolutely happen to me. And so what can I do? Like, what is my locus of control? And that is that you can get tested and you can ask your partners to get tested. And I think it's a great idea to test in between partners, just to make sure you're not bringing anything to the next relationship.
And how do we get it so that STD, like my last STD test was $500. How do we how do we get it so that we're not spending so much money on getting tested?
I'm sorry, I'm just having a moment here. That's insane.
I know.
So let me tell you, so like, I'm not like, pushing a like specific product or anything like that, but I just want to let folks know that there are online STI testing providers that I think are actually reasonable in terms of, they're using a reputable laboratory or whatever. And, I don't have a horse in the game or anything like that, but one of the companies is called Nurex, Nurx. But anyways, what they do is you actually fill in a form, they send you a kit to your house, you collect all the specimens at home, including the drops of blood for the HIV test, and you can get tested for hepatitis and syphilis as well. You mail everything back, and then you get your results online. So it costs under $200 typically.
Oh, that's much better than the $500 I spent.
That's much better than $500. The other thing is that, Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenthood clinics and other family planning clinics typically offer much lower cost STI testing on a sliding scale. And that's hard when you're privately insured. You're like, should I go use those places or whatever? But if you're going to spend $500, many of us don't have an extra $500.
Oh, you came out for a second. You're back magically. I know.
A call came in and then it just like cut everything off. So can I just say, Deb,
so you're saying that Planned Parenthood does provide lower cost STD testing.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood and other family planning clinics, and as well, you're still in New York, right? Yeah, and so New York has a whole network of publicly funded sexual health clinics as well that anybody can go to and get free STI testing. So, and most if you're living in a large metropolitan area, most places have a sexual health clinic that's publicly funded that you can get free testing at. And I think some people feel a little bit guilty when they have insurance, going to those places. But if your plan doesn't have good coverage and you're going to be having to pay $500 out of pocket, trust me, I work at one of these clinics and we are happy we see insured people all the time. You know what I mean? Because of this exact issue. And trust me, we want to get people tested. So I would say, look into those resources that typically are marketed towards people who aren't privately insured. You have the right to use them. And I would suggest that you do, especially if you need to get tested multiple times a year. A lot of us don't have that extra cash laying around.
No, seriously. And by the way, I feel no guilt whatsoever because I do believe our country is so ridiculous when it comes to health insurance.
Yeah.
And I lived part of my adult life in France, where when I went to the doctor, it was free. And when I got an STD test, it was free. And when I got my pill, it was like the equivalent of $3 a month. Right. I mean, it was nothing, right? And so it infuriates me that we're even talking about $500 STD testing in the same way, to get the Binax test, the COVID test, right, until Biden belatedly gave it to us. It was crazy. It was $32 a test or some point, insane. This is a public health crisis and we're charging people to test to make sure that they don't have it. So right, it's the same thing. And it's very relevant. Your book about STD is coming out in the middle of COVID. I know because I had a book come out in the middle of COVID. It's not great. You don't get to go on book tour. You don't get to have a book party. You don't get to have all the fun things after years of working on a book that you would like to have, but it's absolutely relevant. And I think we should maybe end there because I really appreciate you coming on. I know you have patients to see and all sorts of things to do, but thank you so much. And thank you for destigmatizing STDs. And the book is called Strange Bedfellows. And I'm going to put a link in my Substack to the book. And I'm telling you, it is a life-changing book. And I hope everybody reads it because I loved it. I really loved it. And it's wonderfully comedic, and you should do stand-up comedy about STDs.
In my next life. Oh, and can I say one more website?
Sure. Yeah.
For folks, if you want to find the clinic that is offering low cost testing, go to gettested.cdc.gov.
Okay, let's do that again. Gettested.cdc.gov.
Yep, it's a test. It's like a testing locator. You put in your zip code. It'll tell you all the clinics that are offering testing, near you.
Okay, that is a huge boon, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ina. It was really great talking to you. Bye-bye.
So nice. Deb, take care. Bye-bye.